You have some really, I would say, incredible experience and, also to insights with, working with so many marketplaces. So are there any specific opportunities that maybe you're excited about that, we could look into as founders?
Um, I mean, I think, obviously Web3 is kind of like a very, an interesting trend. And whether they're kind of marketplaces or whether they're ending up being their own kind of, their own hybrid between kind of crypto projects and marketplaces and communities, TBD what any of that looks like. But, I obviously think there's a big opportunity figuring out what some of these products and services would look like in a kind of Web3 world. And I don't think they're going to be kind of the one-to-one match. It's not going to be, I'm going to build Uber plus a token. I don't think that's going to be the way it actually plays out. But, the way kind of Web3 is structured, the way there's kind of community ownership, the way you're able to use some of the incentive structure to make sure that, your users own the platform, make sure they're incentivized to use the platform, make sure they're incentivized to promote the platform. I just think there's a bunch of really interesting products that are going to be built around that, again, we may not think of them as traditional marketplaces, but, I think there's going to be, it's not going to be a copy, but there's going to be a lot of similarities between things that are built there. I think Uniswap and Coinbase is like a really interesting example of kind of a, Web3 equivalent to a kind of Web2 product.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought it up. So it's definitely something that, a lot of us are discussing. We have a Web3 space also in the community, and we had a Gabe from Brain Trust on too to kind of
nice.
do a deep
yeah,
dive
I mean,
into
Brain Trust is a great example, right? It's, you're not just taking a talent marketplace and saying like, I'm going to like attach a token to it. It's saying if I was going to build something from the bottom up using the kind of pillars of, of Web3, kind of like how would I build a talent marketplace? And, Brain Trust is great. I think Gitcoin is great. There's a handful of really interesting projects in that space. And so, yeah, I think there is, there's kind of Web2, there's Web3, and for lack of a better term, Web 2.5. But I think there's going to be some cool stuff built there.
Yeah, I think, something that we've kind of discussed a few different times I've seen is, people thinking about, how do I kind of build this from, from the ground up, as you mentioned, versus like, hey, I run like an earlier stage kind of Web2 marketplace. How should I potentially think about, the transition into Web3 and what that could look like?
So. Yeah. I think Chris Dixon, who knows more about crypto than I think anybody in the world, has a great kind of content stuff on this. And, his perspective is always that in the first version of a product, you always end up with like the skeuomorphic ideas. So it's like the idea when the internet came out, like people put newspapers on the internet and they literally it was like a newspaper, like it looked like a newspaper. It had columns and, everything like that. And then, as the technology evolves and as the kind of thinking evolves, people end up building things that are a little more native to the platform. And so I think we're still, I don't think we're totally in that phase, but I think people are still thinking about these ideas in a little bit of a skeuomorphic way. But I do think once people start to think about it in a little bit kind of Web3 native way, that it will end up, the solution space just gets a lot broader. And then I think the kind of the product innovation ends up being a lot faster and a lot more interesting.
Yeah, you guys definitely have some great minds when it comes to I'd say Web3 and crypto on the team there. So I'll have to cut myself off right now too, so that way we just don't go into a whole rant about Web3 here on
down the rabbit hole.
Right, exactly. So we don't have enough time for that.